Congratulations on being invited to Phase 2 of the Specialty Crop Block Grant Program, or SCGBP. CDFA is pleased to welcome you all to the grant proposal phase for 2024, and we look forward to seeing your full grant proposal. In today's webinar, there will be 5 presentations. The first will be an overview of the grant proposal process. Then we will cover the project objectives and work plan and cost sharing templates, the outcome measures section, and the budget narrative template. The final presentation will provide a brief overview of procuring goods and services using federal funding. The context of this webinar builds upon the grant proposal instructions you received with your invitation to the grant proposal phase. For your convenience, a copy of these instructions and a copy of today's presentation has been included in the handouts section of the GoToWebinar. Please feel free to download these references for your use prior to the end of the webinar. The GoToWebinar dashboard will allow you to type and submit questions while our presentation are in process. Questions will be answered at the end of each presentation. In this presentation, we will discuss several aspects of the proposal process, including how to apply, the grant proposal application, the review process, grounds of disqualifications, and award requirements. The grant proposal deadline was extended and is now Tuesday, January 16th at 5 p.m. Pacific Time. Late submissions cannot be accepted, so please be sure to contact us if you have any questions as soon as possible. And please allow yourself an adequate amount of time to access the Amplifund system and complete your application. CDFA will submit recommendations to USDA in May, and we anticipate that USDA will announce the awarded funding in fall 2024. Just as with the concept proposals, grant proposals must be submitted electronically using the Amplifund system, which has been updated with the questions and the attachments required for the grant proposal phase. If you haven't already, you will log into Amplifund using the same username and password that was used in the concept proposal phase. In Amplifund, click on Active Application to access the grant proposal questionnaire and complete your application. Click on Submitting Application if you need to access or reference the concept proposal that was submitted. Some reminders about the Amplifund system. It is designed and tested for use on a PC. We recommend that you disable any pop-up block hardware while using Amplifund and save your work afterwards. When completing your grant proposal, context that was provided in Amplifund during the concept proposal phase should be reviewed and revised if necessary. If a project is awarded funding, the project description will be published on both CDFA and USDA's website. The summaries should include a snapshot of the entire project, including the need of the project goals and outcomes, and the plan for measuring the project success. Importantly, the summary should be suitable for release to the public and understandable to an average reader. There are multiple reasons that a project budget may change from the concept proposal phase. If the final budget amount in the grant proposal varies from the original amount requested, please be sure to update the project budget in Amplifund, including the funds requested, local cost match, and total budget fields as appropriate. Please note that we will review the grant proposal based on the dollar amount indicated in the budget narrative if there are any discrepancies between the narrative and the amount indicated in Amplifund. Also, remember that changes to the budget are not appropriate, and budget amounts requested must be between $100,000 and $500,000. The grant proposal application questionnaire consists of various forms of questions and answer formats. Questions are answered in one or more of the following formats: a drop-down menu, a text box, yes or no, multiple choice, or a document attachment, and including 3 required templates and 1 optional template for a total of 100 points possible. For questions that carry over from the concept proposal, Responses should be expanded to reflect the fully developed grant proposal. It is expected that responses of these questions will be updated and/or expanded to address any administrative and technical review committee feedback that was provided from the concept proposal review. I will briefly review each question on the next few slides. However, it is important to read the grant proposal instructions thoroughly as it contains more detailed information needed to complete the application. The project title is an unscored question. However, concisely describe the project in 15 words or less to create a unique specific title. The prior year SCGBP project is a multi-part question and is an unscored question. If the project you are submitting builds upon a previous SCGBP project, include the grant agreement number from the previous project or projects and the outcome from these projects. Describe how these new projects is different from and builds upon previous work, and provide a lesson learned from the previous project or projects, including potential improvements and how they will be incorporated into the new project. If the project does not build upon previously funded SCGBP projects, the questionnaire will prompt you to indicate this. The other support from federal or state grant programs is an unscored question. SCGBP funds cannot duplicate activities funded by other federal or state grant programs. If your organization has applied for or received funding from another source, address each of the questions in this section. If the proposal has not been submitted to or funded by another federal or state program, the questionnaire will prompt you to indicate this. Note that if you are awarded SCGBP funding and are subsequently awarded funding by another agency, you are required to immediately notify your assigned CDFA grant analyst. The project description is an unscored question. The project priorities are 5 points. Here, you will explain how the project addresses the program priorities identified. The project purpose is worth 10 points. For this question, be sure to address each of the following: the specific issue, problem, or need for your project and what it will be addressing, why it is important and timely to the specialty crop industry, and identify at least one of the 2024 SCGBP program priorities for the chosen funding category as described in the request for concept proposals verbatim, and explain how the project addresses the program priorities. The project objective and work plan is worth 20 points. The project objective and work plan is one of the grant proposal questions that will utilize a downloadable template. Within the template, you will enter the project start and end date, identify the objectives and activities of the project, and identify who will be performed each task and when each task will occur. We will go over this template and all of the grant proposal templates in separate presentations during today's webinar. The project beneficiaries is worth 5 points. In this section, address each of the following. Estimate the number of project beneficiaries. It is important that the number cited be a reasonable estimated number of individuals that could realistically be directly impacted by the results of the project. Estimates must be trackable, measurable, and reportable during the grant duration. Identify and quantify the project beneficiaries and describe how they will benefit. And describe how the project benefits the specialty crop industry rather than directly benefiting a single organization or individual. The specialty crop enhancement is an unscored question. SCGBP funds must enhance the competitiveness of specialty crops as defined by USDA. If your project has the potential to benefit non-specialty crops, describe the method that will be used to ensure that SCGBP funds will not be used towards this purpose. Common examples of projects that have the potential to benefit non-specialty crops would be projects involving farmer markets where non-specialty crops are sold, or projects involving nutrition education that will also include information on grains or protein. If cost sharing will be used to cover activities and/or costs that are unallowable under the program, describe the specific funding or contribution that will be used, including their source, and detail the activities and costs they will cover. If the project does not have the potential to enhance the competitiveness of non-specialty crops, the questionnaire will prompt you to indicate this. The project sustainability is worth 10 points. There are two possible responses to the question of sustainability. Generally, if the project involves a marketing campaign, nutrition education, or a training program, the response to this question should address the likelihood of the project becoming self-sustaining and not indefinitely dependent on SCGBP funds. The second response indicates the benefit of the specialty crop industry that will continue beyond the grant duration. May be most appropriate for research projects or any other projects with a standalone outcome that will not require continued effort to benefit California specialty crop. Grant proposals should have the support of the specialty crop industry. The external project support is worth 10 points. Here, identify at least one specific specialty crop stakeholder and explain why they believe the project is important and timely. Specialty crop stakeholders are individuals or organizations involved in the specialty crop industry. Support from the applicant, employees of the applicant, cooperating entities, contractors, or any other entity that will receive project funding should not be included. Similarly, organizations that will contribute cost share to the project should not be included under this section, as their participation in the form of project support is apparent and addressed directly in the cost sharing summary. In addition, in the grant proposal phase, applicants have the option to attach letters of support to the grant proposal application in Amplifund. Letters of support should be written on a stakeholder's official letterhead, be addressed to CDFA's Office of Grants Administration, and explain why the stakeholder supports the project. Letters of support are not a requirement of SCGBP. The budget narrative is worth 20 points and has a downloadable template that must be completed and attached to the application. The budget narrative template requires a much more detailed description of the funds requested than was provided in the concept proposal budget. All costs must conform with the federal cost principles and USDA and CDFA requirements for this project. Again, the budget narrative will be reviewed in more detail in a later presentation. Cost sharing is an unscored question. If your project will receive cost sharing in a form of match funds or in-kind contributions, a cost sharing template should be completed. However, note that cost sharing is not a requirement for this program. It is not necessary to complete this template if your project does not have cost sharing. In this case, the questionnaire will prompt you to indicate that your project will not use cost sharing. Project oversight is also not a scored question. For this question, attach a current resume or curriculum for the project director, project manager, principal investigator, and any other collaborator who will receive a portion of the project funds. Please attach these in PDF format. The final question is the outcome measure section and is worth 20 points. The context provided should build upon the outcome measures responses provided with the concept proposal application and address any administrative or technical review feedback that was received. As a reminder, all chosen outcome measures and associated indicators and/or sub-indicators must be achievable within the grant duration. It is important to note that the outcome measures and indicators were developed by USDA and the Office of Management and Budget and therefore cannot be changed, altered, reworded, or amended in any way. As mentioned, the outcome measures section will be reviewed in more detail in a separate presentation. As with the concept proposals, grant proposals undergo both administrative and technical review before submitting to USDA. Projects must be subject to additional questions from CDFA and/or USDA during this process. However, please note that not all projects awarded funding are subject to additional questions, and not all projects that receive additional questions will be awarded funding. Ultimately, USDA makes the final determination on projects that will be awarded funding. Here is a quick review of items that may result in the disqualification of proposals. Incomplete proposals, including proposals with one or more unanswered questions necessary for the administrative or technical review, or missing blank, unreadable, corrupt, or otherwise unusable attachments. Proposals that include activities outside the grant duration. Proposals that include additional context or documentation of any kind to circumvent the character limitation within the Amplifund system. Proposals for less than the minimum award amount or more than the maximum award amount. Proposals with unallowable cost or activities that are necessary to complete the project objectives, including indirect costs that exceed the limit set forth in the grant proposal instructions. Each year, CDFA develops a new grant management procedure manual with a comprehensive explanation on the terms and conditions. The 2023 manual can be reviewed for more details on explanation regarding award requirements. The manual can be found by accessing the SCGBP website and clicking Recipient Resources under the Grant Resources heading in the right-hand menu or by using this link. The next few slides will briefly cover some of the terms and conditions for applying for and receiving an award. Please note that on April 4th, 2022, the DUNS number system transitioned to the Unique Entity Identifier UEI number through SAMS.gov. If you have already have a registration on the SAMS.gov, including inactive registrations, you have automatically received a UEI, which can be found on your entity records. A link to SAM can be found in the grant proposal instructions. Successful 2024 applicants will be required to provide their organization's UEI number and have an active SAM registration with no active exclusions before a grant agreement can be executed. It's important to note that SAM accounts must be renewed on an annual basis. If your organization receives funding and does not renew its SAM account, your grant agreement may be suspended until your SAM account is renewed, which could affect your ability to complete the grant project within the grant duration. Finally, all successful 2024 SCGBP applicants will enter into a grant agreement with CDFA and must follow the guidelines outlined in the Grant Management Procedure Manual referenced on the previous slide. For a standard SCGBP award, invoices are for reimbursement of actual expenses. Invoices must be submitted at least quarterly, but no more frequently than monthly. And invoices are required regardless of whether project costs are incurred during the invoice period. In addition, applicants awarded funding must submit progress reports on a biannual basis and final performance reports no later than 30 days following the expiration date of the grant agreement or after the project is complete, whichever comes first. Applicants should also anticipate at least one site visit and one audit or desk review within the grant period. CDFA may put more requirements in place for any non-compliant organizations. And note that past performance is a factor in the awarding of future funding. And recipients must retain financial records, project records, and supporting documents until January 31st, 2031, or until any litigation related to the grant is resolved, whichever is later. Please be sure your organization has the capacity and processes in place to retain all records related to the grant award. More information about these requirements is available in the Grant Management Procedure Manuals. At this time, USDA has not yet published its 2024 request for applications or provided terms and conditions for the 2024 SCGBP. CDFA does not anticipate any major changes when the request for applications is released. However, if necessary, CDFA will attempt to prepare and make available a supplement to advise applicants of any changes to the program upon receipt of USDA's request for application. CDFA and all proposals will be subject to the terms and conditions of USDA request for application and guidance documents. Note that supplemental changes could potentially affect the feasibility of proposals. CDFA will conduct 4 rounds of questions and answers or Q&A to address general questions about the grant proposal phase. Therefore, if you have any questions after today's webinar, please email them to grants@cdfa.ca.gov. Responses to most questions received during the webinar or by email will be posted to CDFA's SCBGP website according to this schedule, which is also found on page 21 of the grant proposal instructions. Note that the deadline to submit questions is Friday, January 8th, 2024 by 8 a.m. Pacific Time. Here are some helpful resources including CDFA's website and email address. Our website contains links to the grant proposal instructions, supplemental documents, and all required templates, and other helpful information. If you have any questions or problems accessing the Amplifund system while working on your grant proposal application, please contact us at grants@cdfa.ca.gov or at 916-657-3231. And that concludes the grant proposal process presentation. Please give us a few minutes to review the questions received and we will return momentarily. Thank you.